Bearcat Blitz on the Believe Network. I'm your host, Russ Heltman, and he is my co-host, Neil Meyer of the frontofficenews.com, Rivals Cincinnati coverage site. You can catch me at Cincinnati Bearcats on SI. Very excited to be with you all this week as we fire into the back half of May. The off season's in full swing for Bearcats football and basketball. Football eyeing the start of fall camp in a little less than 2 months or so. We're getting very, very close to the start of it. And we also have a little more than 2 months, I should say. We also have the transfer portal still flowing from the Cincinnati Bearcats basketball team. They have made an addition in Baba Miller in the last week. We'll get Wes Miller's thoughts on his joining of the roster, and we will dive into the latest contact in the portal for Cincinnati as they have a couple spots that they can still fill on the 2025 scholarship sheet, the 2025-26 scholarship sheet. We'll do all that today, but first, a quick break, and then we will hear all the good stuff on Cincinnati Bearcats basketball and football as the off seasons roll on. Stick with us on Bearcat Blitz. Picking things back up on Bearcat Blitz. I'm your host, Russ Heltman. He's my co-host, Neil Meyer. Neil, we start off the show start off this week's shows with a look at the transfer portal. Some fresh contact in the fold from Wes Miller and the Cincinnati Bearcats. We start internationally with interest in a pair of Croatian forwards. We have Luka Skoric and Ivan Bogdanovic. Jake Lieberman reported the contact in the two dynamic kind of swingmen. That's kind of the position they've been focusing on. It seems like in the final part of this transfer portal window is a one or two more wings that could really bring this versatility of the roster fully together. Skoric played last season with KK Chabona in the ABA League and the Croatia Premier League. Posted 5.3 points, 2.6 rebounds, and 1.2 assists on about 45% shooting at 6'9" tall. And then Bogdanovic played for the SC Derby, and he was part of the Montenegrin Basketball League and ABA League with SC Derby. Averaged 5.7 points and 2.3 rebounds across 41 contests. Neil, it's a little murky on how much eligibility these guys have, but both veterans over 21 years old and guys that would bring some, I think, strong experience to the Bearcats 2025-26 roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always kind of interesting to see this international prospect, new development kind of thing play out for Cincinnati, especially in the situation they're in right now. You see that they have the two recent contacts, but it's going to be interesting knowing that they are nearly 21 years of age playing professionally overseas. So it's going to be kind of murky waters to see how much real eligibility they have left in terms of college basketball. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how they play out. But it's kind of like you mentioned, Russ, that they're still looking for a player at that wing position. And it's great that we note this because they have also reached out to Fordham transfer Rodmod Dean, who averaged 7 points and 6 rebounds at Fordham a season ago. A 6'7" junior. Now junior. Well, yeah, now junior with the red shirt, but 210 pounds, had a decent year at Fordham, so kind of looks like they're still reaching out to potentially add maybe one or two other players there at that wing position heading into this offseason, knowing that they still have two or three spots open on the roster.
Ramon Dean, it seems like Neil, it's one of those kind of guys that could be a nice depth piece, a guy that could really fill in maybe that Josh Reed role. He seems like a guy that could fill that Josh Reed role and maybe pop later on in the season if need be with some injuries or stuff like that, but a connector in the lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's kind of the similar play style that Josh Reed was, right? You look down, Josh Reed's numbers weren't going to blow you off the table where he was averaging 14 points, 7 rebounds, and a couple assists per game, but he started to take off there at the end of the year. And you look down at Ramad Dean's stats. Let's look at his game log here. He had 14 versus Rhode Island in the tournament. He had 15 versus LaSalle, so he's capable of putting up decent numbers, but this is definitely a glue guy kind of piece, a veteran experience, probably one of your more wing defenders per se, and definitely one of those Josh Reed roles to say the least.
Like how the roster's coming together, and I think Wes Miller agrees with that as we uh, we move to the final portions of this transfer portal window. Things really coming together for the Bearcats, led by Jizzle James, Kirk Kriisa, Sean Abayev, a lot of guys that could make huge impacts on the program this coming season. We'll see if it's enough to get them to the NCAA tournament. Time will tell. On that front, we had enough time for Baba Miller to sign and join the Cincinnati Bearcats basketball program officially this week. And we got comment from Wes Miller on what Baba Miller brings to the table. The 6'11", 215-pound junior who posted 11.3 points, 1.7 blocks, and 7 rebounds on 48.6% shooting this past season. Quote from Wes Miller in the press release announcing Baba's joining of the roster. Baba is a great addition to our team. He's an extremely versatile player that fits well with the other players on our roster. On the court, he combines great positional length with a high basketball IQ and skill set. We also like his experience. He's played 3 years of college basketball. He also has impactful experience playing with the Spanish national team and Real Madrid. That European flair, Neil, I think is a real theme with this roster and the kind of propping up of that experience in Europe, of that multi-dimensional experience of being able to take on pressure situations, not only at the college or the high school level, but also at the professional level overseas, may be an advantage that really works in Cincinnati's favor this fall, considering how much, not necessarily international professional experience talent they're bringing in, but all of the international flair that they have on this roster. It's palpable from Kirk Kriisa all the way to Baba Miller.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you look down at Cincinnati's roster, there is a couple guys, not even just Kirk Carissa, Baba Miller.
I think it's like
There's,
6 or 7
I
it's
think
almost
there's,
half the roster has
yeah,
international ties.
yeah, which is crazy, especially now the new landscape of college athletics, right? But overall, back to Baba Miller, I think this is a huge addition for Cincinnati, right? Because you look down at the roster, they were needing a wing player who could go out, kind of score a little bit with the departures of Simas Lukosius, Stan Skillings, just about the whole roster last season, right? So then you go out and you get a very experienced player in Baba Miller who I think he's still scratching the surface, Russ. I mean, we saw his best season of his career with 11 and 7 down at FAU this past season, but he also brings something that they needed, and that was experience. He's played in the ACC, he's now played in the AAC, but now he has an opportunity to go out and play in arguably the best basketball conference in the Big 12. And like we mentioned earlier this offseason about this roster, they have multiple guys that have played at different levels. So the experience is there for Cincinnati. Now it's just going to be kind of seeing how do these pieces fit together. But I think for me, this is the biggest lineup that Cincinnati has had in recent years, and that is a huge thing to take away from this offseason.
Yeah, Kirk Kriisa from I believe Estonia, Sean Abayev with Israeli roots, Jalen Celestine from Canada and Trinidad and Tobago, I believe. Baba Miller from Spain, Mustafa Tiem from Senegal, and Halvin Zelit from France. That is a lot of international mixture and a lot of guys that have a lot of different world experiences bringing it to the table here for the Cincinnati Bearcats basketball team. A basketball team, Neil, that has added like we mentioned, a very strong baseline of talent when we think about the lowest level to the highest level of overall transfer class options that they're bringing to the table here. I mean, we mentioned Evan Miyakawa. They're one of like what 2 teams with 6 or 7 top 300 players in the fold right now. I, I'm impressed, very impressed with how they have put together this transfer portal haul, and we'll see if the coaching acumen of Wes Miller is, I wouldn't say strong enough, but I would say consistent enough this coming season to get them back to the NCAA tournament. And hopefully, Neil, they can avoid just, I mean, like Dan Skillings, 18 points in the first game last year, completely gets derailed by the knee injury, and then is never returns back to the level that he hit at the end of at the end of his sophomore season, heading into his junior season. So it's just stuff like that. You hope they can avoid the weird wild injuries and stay as healthy as possible to give Wes Miller as much ammo as he can to fire out great game plans and winning game plans at that. We'll take a quick break here and we'll get to some interesting tiering from the ESPN side of things on Cincinnati's football quarterback hierarchy. And we'll close the show after that right here on Bearcat Blitz. Neil, ESPN's David Hale came out with his ranking of all 136. I can't believe there's 136 FBS schools now. All 136 FBS QB situations entering the 2025 season, and he had Cincinnati in tier 7 as part of the consistently consistent tier. 16 players in this one, so I guess it just goes from top tier 1 being the number 1 overall group of quarterbacks all the way down to what they have. I think he has 12, 14 tiers, something like that. Oh, so it's way more than that. It's like 17, 20, 21 tiers for David Hill in this exercise. So 20 tiers. Cincinnati at number 7. Neil, how do we think about that? It puts them basically right in the middle of the pack, ranking them with the 8th best quarterback in the Big 12. Comparing that to where people thought Brendan Sorsby was last year before he even really suited up for Cincinnati, that's a big jump because most people had Sorsby for some reason as the second or third worst quarterback in the Big 12. That never made any sense. He never showed any reason to be ranked that low. And I think this is more justified, Neil. Maybe a little bit still underrated because I think Brendan Sorsby, given that he's in the same offensive system for the first time in his college career in back-to-back seasons, has been able to handpick some of his, not handpick, but heavily recruit and be heavily involved in the decision making for his pass catchers. He gets his top target back in Joe Royer, and they get a little bit more dynamic, I think, in the pass catching game in terms of the running backs. I don't see why Brendan Sorsby shouldn't be considered a top 6 to top 5 quarterback, maybe top 5 quarterback in the Big 12. I think you can make that case for him. This is a little bit underrated for me, but much higher than he was entering the season in 2024.
Yeah, and it's actually a great thing you note this too, Russ, because he's currently out in uh, another state training with Jeff Christensen of the Throw It Deep Academy. He's
There
been
you
working
go.
out with Hayes King, Ty Sampson of Alabama, Georgia Tech. So overall, there's a lot to really take away. But like you mentioned, a lot of people had Brendan Sorsby as arguably one of the worst quarterbacks in the Big 12 heading into last season, which never made sense
Right.
to anybody. And then he has the
Even
season.
with no deep ball really at all last year, he still performed pretty well, considering all things considered with the talent around him.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you're back with year 2 in the same offense with Pete Thomas, this offensive staff. I think this is about right, right? Middle of the tier, the 7th, 8th. I think that's about right. Seeing him at the middle of the pack for the Big 12. Now it's going to be interesting to see what might transpire this season. But knowing that the work is there, and I mean, Russ, he looked good in spring ball, right? He looks
Yeah.
really in shape. He looks like he is ready to take that next step. And Cincinnati has the pieces around him. I know there's still a lot of question marks surrounding the offensive line, but the receivers, Russ, I think you and I have talked about it a couple times, looks to appear to be night and day difference from a season ago. And anytime you can add a returning guy like Joe Royer, who could have been off in the NFL in a mini camp as we speak, elected to come stay, you bring in a big body receiver like Jeff Caldwell, Cyrus Allen, Noah Jennings. I feel like right now Cincinnati has all the pieces on the offense end, but it's still going to see how they all really gel together and what this offense likes to do in 2025. But I expect the deep ball to kind of be a little bit more accurate than what it was a season ago, per se.
It's a massive factor, Neil, and I agree with you on that. I think it will be better. It's hard for it to be much worse, considering what was it? What was that number I gave out last week?
Yeah, I think
29.3%
it's
completion.
yeah, 28%, 29.
Yeah, like that's not horrible for a deep ball. You want to be closer to the 40% range, and if you're higher than 40%, I mean that's immaculate because it's really hard to complete those 20 plus yard throws. That kind of just goes without saying. But this is kind of where he slotted last year, Neil. He was 31st in overall ESPN QBR, 72 overall. and he's about 35th to 36th on these rankings, depending on where you look at him in this tier of David Hale. So I think the improvement will be there. And then you just look at the 5 game losing streak, Neil, and this is where the improvement has to come. It's the consistency with Sorsby. Just one game in that 5 game losing streak above 62% completion rate. If they can get that completion percentage higher, move the sticks a little bit more often, get into a few more scoring opportunities in games where they lost by 1 touchdown to TCU. They lost by 2 scores to ISU, 1 touchdown to WVU, 11 points to Colorado. It's just small margins here and there and small tweaks, I think, could get Brendan Sorsby from the 31st best quarterback to maybe top 25 in the country this year. And if Cincinnati misses the bowl season with a top 25 ESPN QBR performance from Brendan Sorsby, then there's way deeper, bigger problems at hand. And it would obviously mean that special teams never got fixed, because you should never, ever lose 7 games with a top 25 quarterback by efficiency in college football when there are 136 quarterbacks starting each and every week. Neil Meyer, Russ Eltman with you all on Bearcat Blitz. Thank you all for being with us across today's show. It was a lot of fun. Be back at it to close out the week. We'll see if Cincinnati makes another addition on the basketball side of things to continue rounding out the roster and the football team in the weight room portion once again of their offseason as they get ready to take on Camp Higher Ground in just a couple of months. For Neil Meyer, I'm Russ Eltman. This has been Bearcat Blitz on the Believe Network. Have a great week, everybody.